The third factor we need to consider to reduce the inputs into the atmosphere are synthetic fuels. Now, and this is because not everything can actually use electricity as a source of energy, especially when we're talking about ships which cross the ocean, or maybe also aviation. Can't really plug in a ship in the middle of the ocean, and if we do use batteries on a ship, we may have to have half of the ship as a battery. So we need to find other solutions for shipping, for aviation, and for industries which need huge amounts of energy, like the steel industry. And therefore, one of the solutions is what we call synthetic fuels. Synthetic fuels are fuels which we can actually make in the laboratory, but they don't come from fossil fuels in the ground. Some of them may even look like and act like fossil fuels, but are actually made in the laboratory. One of the most popular ones we're talking about today is hydrogen. And hydrogen comes in different forms and is found in every water molecule in the ocean. So there's plenty of hydrogen, but we have to split hydrogen from the oxygen, H2O. Hydrogen is bonded to oxygen. So to use that hydrogen as energy, we need to split it. And this takes energy. We need energy to do this. And obviously, we don't want to use fossil fuels for this, because then obviously we're going to still pollute the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. Now, when we talk about hydrogen, there are different types of hydrogen. We normally color them. There's blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen, there's turquoise hydrogen, but what we want to get to is green hydrogen. And green hydrogen is hydrogen which is produced using renewable energies, using solar, wind, other kinds of renewable energies. And what we need to do is to take this clean renewable energy, and then we need to use a chemical process called electrolysis. Electrolysis is basically to split the hydrogen from the oxygen, keeping the hydrogen. The oxygen can go back into the atmosphere. We can store this then in different ways. We can put this either as gas, or we can keep it as liquid hydrogen. We can even convert this to ammonia, which is a safer way to store hydrogen. And this acts as a type of a battery. So we can produce hydrogen in the daytime and then store it for use later, maybe at nighttime, maybe in a different location. So hydrogen is a type of a battery as well that we can use to store renewable energy. We can also transport it in pipelines. We have gas pipelines, oil pipelines today. Maybe we can reuse these for hydrogen in the future. We can also put the containers of hydrogen on a ship and take it from one place to the other. So hydrogen is also a way to transport the energy from one place to another place. We can produce it in one place and we can transport it to another place. And in that final location, we can use hydrogen to generate all of our electricity for our homes, for our industry, for our cities. Anything we need, we can use hydrogen to produce our energy. So hydrogen is going to be, green hydrogen especially, is going to be a major source of renewable energy, a synthetic fuel, which we can use in the future to run our economies instead of fossil fuels. And as we spoke with the transportation, we can use this hydrogen, this green hydrogen, also in the transportation sector. Again, we have fuel cells, buses, which are already running on fuel cells. You can see the cartoon at the bottom that basically hydrogen combines eventually with oxygen in the engine. We produce electrons. Electrons go through the engine to produce electricity. And what comes out of the exhaust pipe of the car is simply water vapor. Hydrogen, we split the hydrogen and the oxygen. We use the hydrogen for electricity. And then what is released back into the atmosphere is the same water vapor afterwards. This produces zero emissions of greenhouse gases. The water vapor that is emitted was water which is a very small amount in the atmosphere, doesn't contribute to the overall greenhouse effect. And therefore, this is a clean way of running our transportation in the future, again, using these synthetic fuels, using hydrogen. Now, as I mentioned, aviation and shipping are actually a big problem. Again, if we look at this plot we saw earlier, 73% of all the energy or the emissions comes from the energy sector for our homes, our industry, our transportation. If we're talking just about the transportation sector, we can see here that about 16% of these greenhouse gases come from the transportation sector. And within that 16%, we can see 12% is from aviation, 11% from shipping. Shipping, we have to rely on shipping for trade around the world, which is increasing. Aviation going on our vacations. It's also increasing the amount of aviation. So we have to find also solutions for the energy to run the shipping industry, aviation industry. We've already spoken about the road transportation and how that will change in the future. So one of the interesting areas we're talking about now is what's called synthetic aircraft fuel, or in general synthetic fuels. And again, this is to make the same type of fuel that we have today in our cars, in our planes, but artificially. Now, what is actually fuel? When we talk about fossil fuels, it's a combination of carbon atoms, and hydrogen. Different amounts of carbon and hydrogen will give you ethanol, different types of alcohols that we can use in the engines of cars, in planes, in ships. And so we can also use clean sources. As we've spoken about, we can produce on the left-hand side of this plot, we can take water, solar or wind energy, and we can produce hydrogen, and we can store hydrogens in a certain fuel plant. We need the carbon. Where's the carbon going to come from? Well, we can actually take it from the polluting fossil fuels while they still exist. So we can take actually carbon dioxide emitted by the chimneys, collect it, bring that, and actually separate the carbon and the oxygen. We can also take it from methane, from other sources of carbon, and we can combine the carbon which is normally emitted into the atmosphere, hydrogen which we've taken from the water, and we can produce these synthetic fuels which basically can be used in the same engines we have today, both in cars, in planes, in ships. But this fuel has been produced synthetically in the lab. It hasn't used fossil fuels, and therefore it's not contributing to the amount of fossil fuels in the atmosphere. It's still fairly expensive to produce these synthetic fuels, but again, with innovation, research and development, the price is going to go down. We're going to have more green hydrogen to use, and therefore synthetic fuels may be the main solution, especially for aviation and shipping in the future.